They don't come alive. When you love them, they come alive. When you leave, when you love them, they sleep. When you show up, they fade. When you try, they hide. But the moment you walk away, something inside them stirs. Suddenly, the person who seemed numb is awake. The one who couldn't feel you can suddenly feel everything. The one who looked bored now looks terrified. And you wonder, what changed? You gave your best. You stayed. You explained. You forgave. And nothing moved. Then you pulled back. And they chased. Then you went silent. And they spoke. Then you left. And they finally came alive. You think, maybe this means they care. Maybe this means they're ready. But it doesn't. It means you just touched the only part of them that still knows how to feel. The part wired to pain. The part that equates loss with love. They don't come alive because they see your worth. They come alive because your absence breaks their illusion of control. They built safety on knowing you'd always stay, that no matter what they gave or didn't, you'd be there. Your consistency, let them remain disconnected. Your love, let them stay asleep. Because in their world, love isn't a place of peace. It's a place of threat. And peace feels like exposure. You loving them isn't comfort. It's confrontation. Your presence forces their wounds to wake. It reminds them how unworthy they secretly feel. So when you come close, they pull away, not because they don't care, but because caring feels unsafe, because being seen feels dangerous. They spent years learning how to disappear before anyone could leave them. And you were the first person who didn't let them vanish. So they ran. They went cold. They went distant. They pretended not to feel what they couldn't handle. But when you left, the silence hit. The mirror broke. And suddenly, the very thing they feared became the only thing that could wake them. Your absence forced them into the emptiness they'd been running from, the stillness they couldn't bear. And for the first time, they felt the weight of their own loneliness. That ache, it's not love, it's panic. The body goes into withdrawal. The heart races. The mind spirals. It's the same chemistry as addiction, because that's what this is, an emotional addiction built on control, fear, and fantasy. When you leave, they lose their fix. Their fix wasn't connection, it was reassurance. You gave them meaning. You gave them stability. You made them feel like they weren't broken. And then you took it away. Now, the illusion collapses, and they scramble to rebuild it. They text. They call. They apologize. They say, I finally understand. I can't lose you. You're the one. But if you listen closely, what they really mean is, I can't lose the feeling you gave me about myself. It's not you they're chasing. It's the relief you represented. Because loving you wasn't about connection. It was about control. And losing you feels like losing self. So they wake up, not to love, but to fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of emptiness. Fear of the mirror you held up to them. You weren't just their partner. You were their reflection. You showed them everything they buried and everything they still crave. That's why it feels real. That's why it feels urgent. That's why it hurts. They're not chasing love. They're chasing the version of them that existed when you stayed. And you start to hope again. You start to think, maybe they finally get it. But soon, the pattern repeats. Because once the fear fades, the walls return, the warmth disappears, the silence comes back, and you're left wondering why they keep doing this. It's because emotional unavailability doesn't want love. It wants safety from love. It wants the idea of connection, not the reality of intimacy. They crave closeness, but can't survive it. They want to be wanted, but can't handle being seen. They want to be chosen, but can't stay when they are. They need the tension, the distance, the ache, because peace feels like nothing, and pain feels like life. That's why they only come alive when you leave. They're wired to feel intensity over intimacy, drama over depth, loss over love. It's how they learn survival. When love first hurt them, as children, as partners, as dreamers, their body recorded the message. Love equals danger. So now, when someone loves them, the alarm goes off. Too close, too safe, too much. They freeze. They shut down. They find reasons to pull away. But when you withdraw, their body interprets that as threat, and threat activates them. That rush of adrenaline, that sudden awareness. It feels like love returning, but it's not. It's trauma reawakening. You're leaving hits the same nerve as their earliest loss. And in that pain, they feel alive, not healed, just reminded. Reminded of what they fear most: being left, being unseen, being unworthy. So they run toward you, not to love, but to escape the emptiness. And because you love deeply, you believe it's real. You feel the shift, the emotion, the urgency. But the truth is, they're not coming home. They're running from themselves. And until they face the part of them that confuses pain for passion, they'll keep repeating the cycle. They'll leave when it's safe. They'll return when it's gone. They'll call it love. You'll call it confusion. But it's really fear, masquerading as connection. You can't teach someone to feel safe in love if their nervous system is wired to fear it. You can't stay close to someone who only feels alive when they're losing you. Because for them, love isn't warmth, it's withdrawal. It's the ache of almost, the high of return, the pain that makes them feel real. And you become the trigger that keeps the story alive. Your presence brings peace they can't hold. Your absence brings chaos they mistake for love. They'll always need the contrast. They'll always chase the loss until they learn that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. Until they learn that peace isn't emptiness, it's healing. Until they see that you didn't come to destroy them, you came to show them what real connection feels like. But they couldn't hold it. Not yet. So they froze. They ran. They shut you out. And then, when you walked away, they came alive. Because your absence forced them to feel. Because your silence echoed louder than your love. Because finally, they met the emptiness they'd been avoiding. And that emptiness, that's what made them feel alive. Not you leaving, not your love, but the pain of being disconnected from themselves. You just happened to be the mirror that showed them. You lit the match, but they still have to learn how to hold the flame. Because until they do, they'll keep burning everyone who tries to love them. And they'll keep mistaking the fire for passion when it's really fear. So if they come alive, only when you leave, remember this: you didn't fail them. You exposed them. You didn't make them run. You made them feel. And feeling is the one thing they've spent their whole life avoiding. You didn't lose them. You woke them. But awakening isn't the same as readiness. They may chase you. They may beg. They may cry. But until they can love you without needing to lose you first, they're not ready. And you can't keep dying to teach someone else how to live. They only come alive when you leave, because loss is their only language. But one day, they'll have to learn how to feel love without fear. And that day won't come while you're carrying both hearts. Sometimes your leaving isn't punishment, it's the mirror they needed to see themselves. It's the space that teaches them what real love costs and what it requires. Your silence does what your words never could. It ends the illusion. It ends the control. It ends the game. And for the first time, they feel the weight of everything they pushed away. That's why they come alive. Not because you were gone, but because they finally realized they were. They didn't come alive because you left. They came alive because the silence finally caught them. The noise stopped. The distraction faded. And the quiet started to speak. Peace terrifies them. Stillness exposes them. They say they want calm, but calm feels like nothing. And nothing feels like danger because they grew up in a world where love and chaos came in the same breath, where the people who said I love you were also the ones who left them gasping, where connection was always followed by collapse. So their body learned that pain means presence, that fear means aliveness, that heartbreak is proof they still matter. When you gave them peace, their nervous system panicked. Too still, too quiet, too real. They didn't know how to rest in something that didn't threaten them. So they created distance, started small fires, picked small fights, anything to feel the pulse again. Because chaos, for them, is not dysfunction. It's home. Their body remembers what their mind forgets. That love never felt safe. That closeness always cost them something. So when you bring them softness, they tense. When you bring them safety, they pull away. Because peace feels like waiting for the fall. And in that waiting, they can't breathe. So they run, not away from you, away from the quiet, away from the tenderness that exposes the ache beneath it. They say they want real love, but real love is too steady. It doesn't chase. It doesn't punish. It doesn't mirror their wounds. And without that chaos, they feel invisible because for so long, pain was proof of existence. If it hurt, it must be love. If it burned, it must be real. That's how their body learned it. That's how their mind rewired it. And you offered peace. You didn't make them chase. You didn't make them prove. You didn't make them perform. You just stayed. And that stillness felt unbearable because now they had to feel. And feeling, without fear, is foreign. So they built chaos to recreate what they understood. They ghosted. They blamed. They shut down. Then watched you ache and called it connection. They needed your reaction to remind them they mattered. They needed your pain to feel alive because in their world, someone's hurt was always the heartbeat of love. That's why they test you. That's why they disappear. That's why they come back. When you stop chasing, your detachment gives them the spike of adrenaline they mistake for passion, that rush of almost losing you. That's their version of intimacy. They feel more in your absence than they ever could in your arms. Because absence mirrors their first memory of love, the one that left. They were trained to find comfort in inconsistency. So consistency feels like confinement, and love that stays feels like danger. Their body says, if it's calm, it's not real. Their mind says, if it's stable, I can't trust it. So they crave the drama, the high and low, the break and fix, because every crash brings a rush, and every reunion feels like relief. That cycle, it's not just emotional, it's chemical, dopamine, cortisol, adrenaline, a cocktail of chaos that feels like love, because it's what love has always felt like. They're not addicted to you. They're addicted to the spike. And you're the one person who gave them both. Peace when you stayed, pain when you left. That's why they can't let go. Because you became both the calm and the storm. Their nervous system doesn't want balance. It wants familiarity, and familiarity is found in chaos. That's why peace feels unsafe. It doesn't match their past. It doesn't match the wiring of their survival. You touch their hand, and they flinch. You offer softness, and they freeze, because their body remembers. Every time softness turned into sorrow. They don't trust gentle anymore. They don't trust safe. Safe feels like the calm before abandonment. And so they sabotage. So they push. So they run. You think they fear losing you. But what they fear most is needing you. Needing means vulnerability. And vulnerability was never met with care. It was met with pain. So they keep control by staying distant. They call it independence. They call it freedom. But it's fear, dressed as strength. And you keep trying to prove that love doesn't have to hurt. You keep holding space. You keep showing up. You keep offering calm. But calm feels like nothing to them. They need movement. They need noise. They need the spike. That's why they light fires, just to feel the burn. Because a heart that's never known stillness mistakes quiet for emptiness. They don't know that the quiet is where healing begins. They don't know that safety isn't the absence of feeling, it's the presence of peace. To them, peace feels like loss, because the people who brought peace always left. So when you bring peace, they brace for goodbye. And when you actually go, they panic, because the script flipped. They were supposed to be in control. They were supposed to be the one leaving. Now, the silence belongs to them, and they can't stand it. That's why they come alive, because chaos has returned. Only now, they're on the other side. Your absence gives them the pain they secretly crave. It feels familiar. It feels safe. It feels like home. That's why they reach out. That's why they cry. That's why they promise change. They don't want peace. They want relief. And relief isn't healing. It's escape. They'll say, I've realized everything. I'll never lose you again. And for a while, they'll mean it. But once the panic fades, so does the passion, because their body can't stay awake. Without the chaos, the silence starts to feel heavy again. And soon, they'll rebuild the storm. Not because they want to hurt you, but because they don't know any other way to feel alive. You became the stage for their survival pattern. They call it love. You call it confusion. But it's trauma, replaying itself. It's the body saying, this is what we know. And until they unlearn it, they'll keep chasing fire and running from warmth. Because warmth asks them to receive. And receiving requires trust. Trust is something they lost a long time ago. So they recreate what they understand. They know how to fight. They know how to flee. They don't know how to stay. That's why your love felt like pressure. That's why your softness felt like suffocation. Because staying meant surrender, and surrender felt like death. So they kept one foot out the door, always half gone, always half guarded, waiting for the moment you'd prove them right, that everyone leaves. And when you finally did, their prophecy came true. But truth doesn't heal them. It feeds the wound. It tells them, see, you were right to run, even as they ache and chase and cry. They're not trying to change the story. They're trying to survive it. You can't save someone who only knows safety through suffering. You can show them love. You can model calm. You can hold space. But you can't make peace feel safe for someone whose peace was once punishment. They have to teach their body that calm doesn't mean loss, that silence doesn't mean danger, that love can arrive without pain. Until then, they'll always confuse comfort for captivity. They'll mistake your stillness for indifference. They'll need the break to feel the bond, Because for them, the bond only lives in the break. That's why they come alive. When you leave, your absence gives them the chaos their body craves. It shocks the system. It brings the pulse back. It lets them feel again. And feeling, even when it hurts, is safer than peace. Because peace is still unfamiliar. They don't know yet. That peace can hold passion too. They don't know yet. That love doesn't have to be a storm to be strong. They don't know yet. That what you offered wasn't emptiness. It was freedom. But freedom scares those who've only ever known cages. So they run back to the bars. They grip the pain like it's home. And from behind those walls, they watch you walk away and call it awakening. But what they're really feeling is withdrawal. Withdrawal from the chaos that made them feel alive. And until they learn to live without the fire, they'll keep mistaking the burn for warmth. When you finally stop chasing, everything changes. The silence that once scared you becomes your shield. The stillness that once felt like rejection starts to feel like freedom because you realize you were the only one moving. You were the only one reaching, the only one holding the rope. While they watched you tire yourself out, you mistook your own effort for connection. You mistook your anxiety for chemistry. And when you finally stop, you see the truth. In the quiet, they don't come closer. They freeze. Because the game only works when you're playing. Control only feels like control when someone's trying to earn it. And when you stop trying, they lose their script. They don't know how to love you. They only know how to keep you wanting. So your stillness becomes confrontation. It says, I see you, and I'm done. Not with anger, not with revenge, just clarity. And clarity is what they fear most. Because clarity is power, and power, to them, has always been in balance. They feed on uncertainty, the tension, the longing, the need. They don't need your love. They need your reaction. They want to know they still matter, that they can still pull a string and make you move. But when you stop dancing, they start to crumble. Because without your energy, they have to face their emptiness. And emptiness is the one thing they can't bear. It's not you they miss. It's the noise, the validation, the attention, the reflection. They need someone to remind them they exist. So when you step back, they start to spiral. They reach out, testing the waters. A text, a memory, a breadcrumb, something small, but enough to see if you'll bite. And the moment you don't, their mask begins to slip. The charm fades. The calm cracks. You start to see the fear beneath the control. Because the truth is, they were never in control. You were. You always were. Your empathy, your consistency, your willingness to stay. Those were their anchors. And when you take that away, you take away their illusion. They can't handle your peace. Because your peace exposes their chaos. Your silence reveals their noise. Your calm shows how loud their wounds really are. They can't manipulate calm. They can't control silence. So they panic. They provoke. They push, trying to bring you back into the storm where they feel safe. But this time, you don't bite. You've learned. You've seen how they come alive only in the absence of love. How they mistake your distance for danger and your attention for suffocation. You've realized you can't keep bleeding for someone who only feels alive when you're hurting. So you breathe, you pause, you stay still, and in that stillness, you begin to come alive too. Not through their chaos, but through your peace. Not through their validation, but through your truth. You realize you were never unlovable. You were just trying to love someone who wasn't ready to receive it. You were trying to show safety to someone who only knew survival. And that's not your failure. That's their fear. Because safety, to the unhealed, feels like loss of control. Peace feels like danger. Love feels like exposure. They push it away because they can't hold it. They can't hold you. And finally, you stop trying to be held. You stop explaining yourself to someone who doesn't listen. You stop proving your worth to someone who is blind to it. You stop begging for crumbs of emotion from someone who feeds on your confusion. And that's when you take your power back, not by fighting, not by forcing, but by detaching, by understanding that their silence isn't rejection, it's reflection. It shows you where they are in their healing and where you no longer belong. You can love them and still walk away. You can care and still choose peace. Because love, without safety, is just survival. And survival is not your purpose anymore. You've learned to stop equating chaos with chemistry. You've learned that love shouldn't hurt to feel real. You've learned that some people only wake up when you finally rest. And that's not love. That's loss in disguise. They'll tell you they miss you. They'll say they've changed. But if you look closely, you'll see it's the same pattern, wrapped in regret. They don't want to rebuild. They want to reset. They want you back in the familiar pain. That feels like home to them. But not this time. Because home, you've realized, is not a person. It's peace. And peace doesn't need proving. You're done proving, done performing, done waiting for their delayed awakening. You've awakened for yourself. And that's the moment. They feel your absence, not as punishment, but as consequence. They finally face what they've been running from, themselves. And maybe someday they'll learn to stay. But that lesson isn't yours to teach anymore. Your lesson was letting go without closing your heart. Your healing isn't about revenge. It's about release. And release is what truly sets you free. Because when you stop chasing, you don't lose them. You find you. And for the first time, you come alive too. They always come back. Not when you're crying. Not when you're waiting. When you're calm. When you've stopped checking the phone. When your energy shifts from reaching to resting. That's when they feel it. The silence. The absence. The loss of control. And suddenly, they remember your name. They feel it in their chest, like a ghost pressing on the ribs. Not love, alarm, because the one thing they never imagined was you moving on. You were supposed to stay available, on standby, half healed, half hoping. They thought they could disappear and still be in your orbit. But now you're gone, and they can't breathe without the pull. So they reach out. A late night text. A soft, familiar hey. Something harmless. Something small. Something that cracks the door open again. You stare at the screen, and for a second, your heart remembers the old rhythm. The thrill. The hope. The maybe. But you've learned. You've learned that the return isn't a resurrection. It's repetition. Because people who heal come back different. People who haven't come back desperate. And desperation is not devotion. It's withdrawal. They're not running toward love. They're running from loss. Loss of control. Loss of validation. Loss of the mirror you used to hold up that said, you're worthy. So they perform. The charm returns. The words flow easily. I miss you. I see it now. I'm ready. And your heart wants to believe it. Because belief feels better than goodbye. But listen closely. Their voice hasn't changed. Only the script. It's the same story, dressed in new language. Because they don't want peace. They want access. They want back the place you built for them in your heart. The one they left empty. And now want to rent again. But this time, you've raised the price. It costs presence now. Consistency. accountability. And they can't afford that. So they bargain instead. They send memories, old photos, songs that used to belong to you both. They call it nostalgia. But nostalgia is just manipulation wearing perfume. They don't want to relive it. They want to reset it, to rewind to the part where you still believe them. Because belief was their power. But you've seen too much. You know that love doesn't sound like promises whispered at midnight and broken by morning. You know that growth doesn't happen between apologies. So you don't chase. You don't answer right away. You sit in your peace and let their words echo until they lose volume. Because what once felt magnetic now feels heavy. What once felt like love now feels like guilt. You remember the nights. You begged for clarity and got confusion instead. You remember the way they disappeared whenever you needed them most. And suddenly, their return feels smaller, predictable. You start to see the pattern, not as romance, but as repetition. They come back, not because they love you, but because they love who they are when you love them. You made them feel special, even when they were careless, seen, even when they were cold. Your forgiveness was their comfort zone. So now, when you stop forgiving, they mistake it for cruelty. They call you cold, detached, changed, and they're right. You have changed because growth always looks like distance. To those who stay stagnant, they want the old you, the one who tolerated the cycle, the one who confused love with endurance. But that version of you doesn't exist anymore. You buried her in the silence they created, and what rose instead was someone who knows her worth, someone who knows that love without respect is just dependency, someone who no longer flinches when peace replaces passion. So when they come back with their "I've changed" speeches, you don't argue, you don't explain, you just smile and say nothing, because nothing is the most honest answer to a person who never listened. Silence tells the truth. Their ego can't handle. It says, I loved you enough to let you go, and I love myself enough not to go back. They'll call it pride. You'll call it healing. Because healing isn't about winning. It's about waking up from the illusion you once called love. They'll keep testing the edges, checking if the door is still unlocked. But you've learned that closure is not a conversation. Closure is a decision, and you've made yours, not out of bitterness, but out of truth. Because love that demands your pain to stay alive was never love at all. It was survival, disguised as connection. So you walk away with quiet strength. You don't block them to punish. You release them to protect. Because every return, without transformation, is just repetition in disguise. And you've danced that dance for the last time. You leave them, not with anger, but with understanding. Understanding that they came back, not to love you, but to feel alive again. But you've already found life in peace, and peace doesn't chase. Peace stays. When peace becomes your new normal, the silence stops feeling empty. It starts feeling like home. No tension, no guessing, no waiting for the next collapse. Just space, just breath, just you. And that's when it finally lands. You were never too much. You were just placed where love was too small. You spent years shrinking yourself to fit inside someone else's fear. Now you expand without apology. You don't chase what runs. You don't beg what breaks you. You don't perform for love anymore. Because love doesn't need convincing. It recognizes you. It meets you halfway. And you've learned people who only come alive when you leave were never looking for love. They were looking for reflection. You were the mirror. They were the mask. And now that the mirror is gone, they face themselves for the first time. That's their awakening, not your responsibility. Your awakening is softer, quieter, truer. It's the moment you stop needing closure because peace gave it to you. It's the moment you realize healing isn't forgetting, it's remembering without flinching. You remember the lessons without reopening the wound. You remember the love without losing yourself inside it. You remember the pain as proof that you tried, and you stop punishing yourself for wanting more. Wanting more was never the problem. Settling for less was. Now, when they reach out again, you don't feel that old spark. You feel gratitude. Gratitude for what it taught you. Gratitude for what it freed. Because every heartbreak was really a doorway, and you walked through it. You walked through fire and came out clean. You learned that real love doesn't begin with them. It begins with you. It begins in the way you speak to yourself when no one is listening, in the way you choose peace, even when chaos is familiar, in the way you stop running and let stillness find you. And maybe one day, someone will come who doesn't wake up when you leave, but stays awake while you stay. Someone who doesn't need your pain to feel alive. Someone who meets you where peace lives. Until then, you keep growing. You keep healing. You keep choosing you. Because the truth is, you don't need to be chased to be cherished. You don't need to be abandoned to feel seen. You don't need to disappear to be missed. You just need to be present, whole, here. And that's enough. So breathe, rest, let go. You survived the cycle. You ended the loop. You didn't lose them. You found you. And that was always the point. If you're watching this and you feel that ache in your chest, the kind that recognizes itself in every word, that's not weakness. That's awakening. Let it happen. Let the silence stretch. Let the peace arrive. And when it does, don't run. Stay. Stay with yourself this time. Because this version of you is the one you were always meant to meet. If this spoke to you, don't keep it inside. Share it with someone who's learning to stop chasing. Remind them that walking away isn't giving up. It's coming home. And if you're still healing, stay close. There's more truth coming, more light, more peace, because you deserve to feel alive without losing yourself to someone else. Always.